I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman, Chairman of the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee. The American Fire Service is rich in tradition and culture. A firefighter's life is filled with many emotional highs and lows. Stories of major fires, national disasters, medical calls, firehouse living, and family life are often verbally shared from one generation to another. Many times these stories are lost forever when a firefighter passes away. In an effort to preserve these stories, in 2019, the Greensboro Fire Department History Book Committee launched a new program of recording audio-video of our retirees' lives. These stories will be shared on our website, gfhbc.org. In 2020, we did not record because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please listen as these firefighters share their life experiences with all of us.
My name is Grayson. I'm 55. I started my fire service career as a volunteer in my home county, Cleveland County, up in between Charlotte and Asheville. My dad was a charter member of a volunteer department, so I literally grew up there. Had a love of the fire service. Went to school at NC State and started working in the career service, and I worked my way up through the ranks in the fire service in the Wake County area. I eventually worked for Wake County and then advanced to become the fire chief in Burlington. That was my first fire chief's position. Then I served as fire chief in Asheville for approximately 9 years following that, and then came to Greensboro and served 6 years in Greensboro before finishing my local government retirement years. I ended with 32 years in the local government retirement system in Greensboro. After retiring from the local government system, I now serve as a consultant to cities and counties across North Carolina as a specialty fire service consultant and work with the North Carolina League of Municipalities as their consultant. So I've never wanted to do anything other than the fire service. So as I was growing up, there was really never a question that I wanted to do anything other than that. I wanted to, I kept trying to find, what career could I do and still be a firefighter? What could I do that, what kind of occupation could I have that I could still volunteer or that type of thing? And then when I was able to go to NC State and work and earn my degree, I said, hey, I could actually do this as a career. I had a chance to work really closely with the Raleigh Fire Department and had a chance to understand what a career firefighter really had the opportunity to do and be. And so I had no question I wanted to be in the career fire service the rest of my life. So I didn't really have any difficulty deciding this is what I want to do, this is the profession I want to be a part of. Being in the fire service was really never a debate for me. That's what I always wanted to do. That's where my heart was. That's where I intended to be. And even when finishing my local government time, I knew I had a few years to give back and continue to serve. I feel that as long as God gives me the ability to serve and have talents, I need to use them. And so even though I finished local government service time, I continue to still be very involved in the fire service across the state and just in a different way. So one of the really pivotal pieces for me, and this dates back to 1982 when I started in the fire service. We were really fortunate. The city of Shelby conducted their first recruit academy, and this was before firefighter 1 and 2 was a thing. Before firefighter 1 and 2 was really implemented in North Carolina, the city of Shelby went out and pulled people into their city recruit academy. And I had the chance to go through the city of Shelby's recruit academy under firefighter 1 and 2 before it was really ever implemented. Then it was called 1001, 1002. And so as a high school student, I was in high school, and we went every Tuesday and every Thursday night and every Saturday for about 2.5 years. And so we went every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Saturday. We went through firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and EMT. So by the time I graduated high school, I had my firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and EMT by that time. So I had the opportunity to really learn from wonderful instructors, what that was all about, had the opportunity to apply it. It just was really integral to what I was doing, and I learned the right way to do things. We had the ability to learn, at the time, very innovative ways of firefighting, very different ways than my dad and the previous generations had learned. And my department added a number of people about the time that I came in. Shelby was pretty innovative in doing that because they hired pretty much everybody in the class except me. And so I went on to school, but they hired a lot of folks out of my group, and that was really creative for them. And so many of them were hired, and they have now retired from Shelby. And so they were, it was really an innovative program that they launched. And we were really blessed because we had great instructors that taught us the right way to do things. Well, so one of our first instructors, his name's Jake Wisnant. Jake just recently retired as the executive director of North Carolina State Fire Chiefs. He was one of my first instructors. He was a firefighter with Shelby at the time, but he was a wonderful instructor, and he made everything fun. So everything he taught, he would make fun. For example, if he was teaching you to operate an aerial truck, he would put eggs on the top of the ladder. So you had to teach yourself to operate the ladder smooth enough that you could operate it without spilling the eggs, as an example. So, he made everything fun. And so he and I have been lifelong friends and still are today. But he is, he taught me that the importance of good training. And I have always been such an advocate for training because I saw the impact that can have on a firefighter's career and the value of training. And so, that was instilled in me very, very early on. And that's really what I wanted to be, quite honestly. I was like, I want to be like him. I want to be an instructor. I want to be a training officer. So that was my initial career plan, was I want to be a firefighter and I want to be a training officer. And that was my track in going to college because I wanted to be an instructor. So I went to college to be a teacher, to be an instructor. When I got into this career, I mean, this career felt like a glove. It felt like it fit. It was where I needed to be. This career was where I needed to be. I felt like this career is where God intended me to be. It's where He intended me to serve, and where I was supposed to be, and where I needed to be able to serve the different communities that I was a part of. I was so blessed just throughout all of my career, and continue to be, quite honestly, to just work with such excellent people. I have had the chance to work with such intelligent, bright people, just genius people that could do anything. I can think of just dozens and dozens of people who are so talented and so versatile that could do anything. If we said this is a task before us we've got to do, so many people come with more skills than they realize they have. And you can put a group of people together that can achieve anything that you put before them. I've thought about some of the ways to talk about my tenure here, and I only was able to serve really overall a fairly short period of time in Greensboro, and the last few years of my service in the local government system. And it was my tenure here was very difficult, and that was really not something that the men and women in the department needed to know about or worry about. Their task and duty was to be out serving people and doing their job, providing fire and emergency services and protecting people. But we had a very difficult time period that we happened to be serving in. When I came to Greensboro had throughout the state, at least reputation-wise, had a very solid record of being a very stable government to other places. That was not the case when I came. During the years I was here, it was very unstable from a city management perspective. I went through a number of bosses. I think I went through 6 bosses in a 5-year period. So we had a lot of transition of leadership and management during that period of time. In fact, we had so much transition that it's difficult for a leader to be able to give consistent direction to personnel when their boss changes so much. I actually had a notebook. I had a hard copy notebook, and every time I had a new boss, I'd just pull it out and start again with them. Okay, let's take a ride, and here's what we're doing, here's our capital, here's our issues, here's our challenges, because we literally changed direction so much that I continually was ramping up, my supervisors, so to speak, about what was happening. But more so than that, we were really, under that period of time, I came in right at the recession period. My timing, to some, looking back on it, some might say that it was a poor time to come in. I choose to look at it that was the time that God had decided for me to be here. I think looking back on it, I was really here to be a protector and defender of the department during that time. The men and women needed to be focused on providing service, but during that period of time, we hit the recession. In fact, I came in May, and then by June, we were making significant budget cuts. We had a de-annexation, pretty significant de-annexation that had occurred. We started having some significant changes with financial issues. We had an interim manager at the time. Several months later, we had another change in management. We had a change in council members at the time. We had some really strong direction from elected officials during that period of time. We were forced to make significant budget cuts. We weren't given choices in making those budget cuts. But I was extremely committed. Do not reduce people, do not reduce stations, do not reduce companies. I refused to reduce companies, people, stations, so of our own personnel. And so we really worked diligently. Most folks didn't really know how much battle went on behind the scenes to keep that from happening. Coming into the department at the time in 2009, we were the only Class 1 fire department in North Carolina. And so that at the time, we obviously were very proud of that. You don't want to lose that. Leadership at the time said, you're too good. We don't care about that anymore. We want to be less than that. We don't need to be as good. Well, that's not the way that you are, that's not the way you're brought up in the fire service, right? You're brought up to do better. We want to achieve more. We want to improve. We want to gain. We want to do better. And so to be told, we want to be less. We want to reduce. We don't want to be as good as we are. That was really difficult. When you have elected officials that say, you've made these cuts, that's not good enough. We want to see blood in the water. Publicly say, we want to see blood in the water. Your cuts aren't enough. We go back and make more after you've already gone about as far as you can go without people, trucks, companies, stations, right? So I think that really was a significant framework for the value of our local here, because we had a very unstable city management leadership because of so many changes. We were in a difficult time period with the recession and financial issues and budget cuts. And so I'm so grateful to our local for being able to listen to issues and help be a voice to help push those agendas of don't close stations, don't reduce people, don't reduce companies, and help back up those voices that we were trying to share with administration. When we were getting you're too good, we want to cut you, we want to reduce you, we want to make you less than what you are today. When that goes against every grain of how firefighters are wired, right? Yeah. And so there was so much pressure to do that during that period of time. It was just a constant battle during a several-year period. And so the local did such a benefit, because that wasn't every council member that was saying, I want to see blood in the water, that isn't enough. It wasn't every city administrator that was saying that. So by their work with elected officials who were friendly to the fire service, they helped overcome that. And we did not close stations. We did not reduce our number of people. We did not reduce the number of companies. We redeployed. We reduced some contracts. I know that was some challenges. We made some other financial changes that we had to make during that period of time. But we stood true to not reducing our levels of service during that period of time and overcame that. And in fact, during that period of time, not only did we not reduce those areas, but we actually added stations and actually opened those stations and made improvements. And we also were able to make some improvements in capital, make improvements in replacing air packs, make improvements in continuing to replace apparatus that needed to be replaced, things that were essential services during that period of time. Now, our personnel went years without pay raises during those recession years, and it pains me that was the case. But our local was really instrumental to help keep those cuts at check or at bay. Almost like a sprinkler system, so to speak. That there was this fire, and they kept it in check. They kept it from getting too far out, because those things were really things that beyond what the fire chief could do when they were limited by some elected officials and city administration. So the local really is helpful, I think, in that dimension, and our group really was beneficial during what I would say was probably one of there may be years that many people want to forget, but to not talk about those years and to not acknowledge them, would not to acknowledge that they existed. So I think it's important to give appreciation to the local for the work that they did during that period of time. I think it's critical that we keep our elected officials and administrators well educated as to the job that our firefighters do, the challenges they face, the needs they have, and the solutions that they have to fix those needs, and be able to understand the value that they have to the community. And it has to be constant, that there's so many competing interests for our elected officials that it can't be just one time. It has to be something that's regular, routine, so that they keep in the forefront of their mind the value and importance of firefighters. We in the fire service, we often think, well, what else is there? We're number one. Well, there may be 20 other different departments that have needs and issues. So we have to really work, I think, to be a priority to the public. We also have to be a priority to the elected officials and keep that communication constant and positive and educational. And it's very dynamic. Our needs continue to change. Like as I was coming over here today, I drove by the Publix distribution facility. So as our community changes, the hazards and the risks change, we've got to communicate what those are, and we've got to be able to explain those needs and be able to articulate those to the elected officials so they understand, why do we need that $800,000 fire engine? Why do we need those 15 additional people? Why do we need those pay raises to keep us competitive with other cities and everything else? The thing that I'm most pleased with is the crew at the auto repair garage. Y'all is still living amongst us today. So let me say that up front. We had a very close call that day. Captain Sutterth, Chief Sutterth now.
Hey, all you in the middle building, the roof is about to cave in. Stay out of the middle building. We're going to have to make a hole cut on this right side.
Command copy, you're cutting a hole on the right side of the building. Go ahead.
10-4, the roof is, looks like it's about to fall in on this middle building. We're going to stay off of it.
Command from safety.
got heavy fire Division B sign, Division B sign. Also, I would go ahead and get everybody off the roof. Nobody on the roof.
All right, 10-4, ventilation from command, you copy? Ventilation from command, let me know when you're off the building. I see you coming out.
Mayday, mayday. Call second alarm. We got a mayday. We got a mayday. Everybody clear up. We had a clamp for the building. We got a mayday. Rescue. Division B side. Division B side. Mayday. This is Engine 11. On fire attack. Captain Tudor is down. Please, Captain Tudor.
Command copies mayday. Captain Tudor is down. Do you have a visual on him?
The worst day, that was the worst day, you know. So, you know, just that our folks worked so hard to get them out of that building. And I think that was an accomplishment of the department our department made such an accomplishment to get them out. And I so admire Chief Sutter and all the people that worked so hard in that situation and overcame that adversity. I think you could say something similar to the tank farm incident that occurred, and so much work by Vince, by Chief Hood, all the people who worked to plan and prepare beforehand, and then how things were carried out that day, and orchestrated to keep that from being a worse situation. So from those types of, I'll start with incidents, because those were actual events. And then pull back from that to say just really overcoming that siege that we had during those years of budget reductions in the pressure and the economic downturn and recession years were really difficult, and overcoming that and getting to a better place. Things were really picking up. By the time I retired, things had started to pick up. The economy is better. We were back into a better situation. So just really overcoming that, I think, was a group effort by many, many people. Some more individual, tangible things that were out there. I was really proud of the changeover of air packs. I think that was something that so many people worked hard on and put so much effort in, and I think that there were times that paid off for us many times as a department afterwards. We were right in that transition of getting ready to change over the air packs when the garage fire happened. We hadn't quite changed over, but had gone through training for that. I think that was a case where we were blessed that the training had occurred, and our folks were very sharp on their skills from going through working in confined space and preparing with the new air packs. Probably was a huge, Harold did the video about how did we come through that. And I think going through that training, really, that was a blessing from God that we'd gone through that training, because everyone got out of that situation, though we didn't know that morning, right, or that afternoon, and even the next day was a little sketchy, right? But I think that preparedness really helped. But I was very proud of that changeover. It took so much behind the scenes to make that air pack change, and most departments would not have struggled so much. It's just the timing of that and the cost of making that happen. To get the equipment was huge, but then there was so much effort and coordination by so many people to make that transition. I think that was really monumental for the department, and I think that was a big advance forward itself. We were able to continue to move with new stations during that period of time. Being able to replace Station 57 and move out of a house into a modern station at that location, Mount Hope Church Road area, being able to get a station in place in the southern portion of the city as well, and then the Reedy Fork Station. Reedy Fork Station had taken a lot of work and planning and trying to look at a location and site. And I think Reedy Fork Station, one area I'm particularly proud of that is was joint with EMS, and was really the first of those models where EMS was a partner and not only cohabitating, but helping to pay for the facility as well. And it was the first of that model, and it's been emulated obviously in others. And then we did a lot of groundwork for what's happening today. So the Burlington Road Station, the groundwork for that station was laid in partnership with EMS and the facility, land, design, some of those pieces. The groundwork for reconstructing Station 7 and buying properties adjoining that facility, and it's looking beautiful today. Drove by it earlier today. It's seeing that come to fruition, and being able to get some of those initial things. So I think some of the station improvements, but the other piece that I'm really proud of that we made improvements on as a department during that period of time is ladder staffing. And I go back to the local on that piece. The ladder staffing was we worked really as a department, and that was such a joint effort from many people. We knew we were not where we needed to be with ladder staffing. And how do you address it? One piece at a time. So we were able to take this ladder and get it to 4 people. And then we went for this ladder one at a time. We got this ladder at 4 people. And then we were able to move to another ladder. It was just incremental, step by step. And then we went into writing multiple years of SAFER grants in trying to get, we kept writing SAFER grants for trying to get ladder staffing. And so many people had their hands on trying to work so hard. I think that Todd Tuttle and the work that he does is underappreciated by the department. He does so much in data and analysis that helps our department in many ways. And being able to analyze that data and present that data helps so much in not just justifications, but eventually. We ask and ask and ask, and eventually that we were able to show, all right, the city has put 4 people on this ladder and this ladder and this ladder. Then we needed to finish it. And because we had that commitment, that SAFER grant came through in 2015. And so that was a very much needed accomplishment. And I feel like that was an effort by so many people that dialed up the safety for the Greensboro Fire Department and got us to where we need to be. We had staffing on engines. We didn't have it on ladders. And so that was something that I certainly was very proud of. And it took many people working over many years to get that accomplished there. But we did do a lot of work on promotional processes because we wanted them to be very predictable. Are they exactly the same? No. No one's ever going to have exactly the same process. Are they 100% predictable? No. But they should be reasonably predictable, that this is when it's coming and this is generally what I should expect to happen. Also, we tried to put some safety measures in place so that there was third-party assessors or third-party evaluators, even down to the engineer process, that there were observers in place so that we had people from other departments that was at least observing what was occurring and looking at pump pressures or looking at the operation to see that if that rating was given, that there was somebody looking over their shoulder to make sure that that was accurate and appropriate. If it were assessment exercises, that we had third-party folks looking at that. If we were doing testing, that we did testing with third-party testing. Chief Gerald was very instrumental in a lot of those pieces. We used purchased testing products administered by a third-party company where he would administer them, and then we proctor them, and then we sent them to be graded in another location. You know, just best practices. I think what we were really trying to do is just implement best practices in written testing and implement best practices in the testing process, and then try to make them as predictable as possible. Where the local, I think, really help with that is holding training sessions to help prepare people. Okay, this is coming, let's prepare for this assessment. Well, one of the things that we were able to do during this time period, so we went through a period of no raises for anybody for a period of time, which was horrible. You know, we had no choice with that situation because of the recession. The police chief at the time and I just knew how detrimental that was to everybody. It was adversely impacting police. It was just horrible for our firefighters. It was horrible for police officers. So he and I tried our best to work together to make a push. He and I joined forces and pushed back to city administration at the time and said, we have got to do something and do it differently. So Ken Miller was the police chief at the time, and he and I came together and said, let's do a public safety pay plan. And we joined forces with police at the time and said, instead of the city pay plan piece, we have ranks and we have structure that's unique to public safety. And a best practice model in other cities is to have a public safety pay plan. And the advantages of that is that the public safety pay plan could be funded in years when the city didn't have the funds to fund all city employees. Not that everybody's important, but if there were limited funds, like we had gone through when no one had raises for what, three or 4 years we went with no raises. So when in those cases, if there wasn't money for everyone, they could fund some raises for public safety. So Ken Miller and I presented a plan to have a public safety pay plan. And we wanted to do that so that it was uniform. And there was a fire plan and a police plan, and they mirrored one another. So that every rank in police had a match to every rank in fire. Okay, so there was parity between the two. And there was a match between every police rank and every fire rank. Now, there might be some differences in the amount of pay because the market for police is different than the market for fire, okay? But that there was the structures were the same. If we had deputy chiefs, they had deputy chiefs. If we had captains, they might have lieutenants. If we had battalion chiefs, they might have captains. The titles might be a little different, but there was parity in the number of ranks. There was parity in the way that the promotions were given, the amounts and percentages of promotion, and that our people would get the same advantages, if you will, in promotions that police receive. So the pay plan was set up so that the same advantages happen for both. Now, the pay plan's great if you fund the pay plan. Okay, so the only challenge is if you have a pay plan, you have to fund the pay plan. Okay, so but we put the structure in place to have a pay plan, and to do that, there were some adjustments made with some titles so that it mirrored the police pay plan. And so maybe, I think that's really what you're referring to. We did make some changes in titles and ranks, but if you put the police structure pay plan and the fire plan at the time together, they mirrored, because we were trying to make a unified front together to say we have a public safety pay plan and they're the same. Now there's some advantages to that too. For example, we have, fire has an advanced certificate, so does law enforcement have an advanced certificate. If we pay one, you pay the other, things like that. So we were trying to really look long term. I'd call that very much a strategic move. We were trying to strategically put some things in place. I haven't followed that in the last 6 years since I've been gone of where that's gone, but the pay plan structure is great if it's funded, but that we were trying to put those forward so that they would be uniform and be able to match what police was doing. I think the effort of the interview is just excellent, to be able to capture the folks that have been part of the department and have helped to make this organization what it is. Greensboro Fire Department is an excellent organization made up of such talented people, so dedicated and so high performing. You know, I mentioned Chief Suttereth earlier, but there's lots of Chief Suttereths in this department. I wasn't trying to single him out, but there are many people just like him who are such dedicated public servants and just very fine people who are part of this department. And I think that you helping to showcase their talents and skills is just extremely admirable, and your work to do that is very appreciated. Well, I think during my time in Greensboro, you know, every role that you serve in, you have different purposes. So when I had the opportunity to serve in Asheville, I was more of an innovator. That my role was to be an innovator there. My role in Greensboro was to be more of a protector here, and you know, coming into a Class 1 department in the recession was to protect the department from loss. That was really what I think that I was put here to do, because that was so much of the focus. But I think being able to understand that you have chiefs have different roles for different periods of time. And you've got to be able to change gears based on those needs, right? And you've got to be able to pivot based on those needs. So one of the things that I have the chance to do today is I do a lot of recruitment and selection for new chiefs across the state. And in doing so, I often will have the opportunity to mentor new chiefs. So new chiefs coming in the role, they may be from within the organization or they may be outside, and cities will bring me in to help them to acclimate. And I'm very quick to tell them, you have to understand what your role is at this time and be able to adjust to that role. And you also have to realize, and I learned from experience with that you know, what works at one time may not work at another time, and what works in a role in one place may not work in your role in another place. You've got to be able to, you've got to realize that you've got to be very dynamic. You've got to meet people where they are. You have to meet the organization where they are too, and you've got to meet the needs where they are, just like firefighters do. You have to treat a car fire like a car fire, a house fire like a house fire, a hazmat like a hazmat. But every house fire is different, right? We like to think, well, here's what you do at a house fire. You're going to establish water supply. You're going to do a 360. You're going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It sounds good, but everyone's different, right? Every condition's different. So I think you have to look at, you really have to be able to do a 360 on your situation and adjust your tactics accordingly, not just on a house fire, but in leadership as well. So looking back, let's look back a little bit, and I think that's always a little easier to look in your rearview mirror sometimes, right? So I think the pronounced jump off the rearview mirror for me is cancer issues and the importance of that. We didn't know that. We didn't know that 10 years ago, right? I mean, we didn't know some of those things. One of the departments that has had the most cancer issues in the state has been Asheville. I've gone to several funerals of people I served with in Asheville that have died of cancer, and and people I knew and have watched, you know, just people that have passed of cancer there. Of course, our state is so far behind in that. We won't get into that topic, but the issue of cancer, connectivity to carcinogens, and what we've got to do to protect our firefighters. I think we're just at the cusp of that awareness. We are aware now. 10 years ago we weren't. I think that change is happening. Obviously that's beginning in facilities, equipment, training. I think we're just at the edge of that today. We've come a long way already, but we've got a long way to go there. I think that's a rearview mirror, and it's a part of the forward piece as well. So I think that's one of the ones that jump out significantly. The landscape with volunteerism is significant. You say, well, why would you bring up volunteerism for a career department? I think it's still significant. We're losing about 10% of volunteers globally, about 10% of volunteers a year. It's a huge issue in the fire service. As we lose volunteers, people like me who we recruit to become career firefighters, that's an issue. As we depend on our neighbors sometimes for automatic aid or mutual aid, that's an issue as well. But it also diminishes our ability to recruit for career firefighters. I think that's a challenge we have today, and I think that's one that will continue to be a challenge for us moving forward. We all here have had a lot of attention in the past, again back to rearview mirror, on our challenges with diversity in the fire service. We're so out of sync of where we need to be there. That's a rearview mirror and that's a forward mirror as well, so or forward view. And so as we have one reason that we have had such a diversity challenge is we have pulled many times from volunteer departments who don't always reflect people of color and women, but those numbers are diminishing. So we've got to find new and innovative ways. And I think that has been an issue, and it can be more of an issue. I think our elected officials, though, and community expectations will become much stronger there than they have been in the past. So we have got to find different ways of managing that looking forward. I mean, I think just we can't keep doing business the same way we've been doing it and expecting different results. So as an example, I've read where Greensboro is doing the Spark camp this past week. So as an example, we have got to do more things like that in order to be able to stimulate interest in women, people of color, and other minority groups, in order to show them that this is a career that is a viable career for them to explore and be interested in. And so I think that's a piece that is important to us moving forward as well. So I think those are all both rear view but also forward view as well that are in our future. The other piece that I would say is that I think looking forward is more regionalism. Now that's a good thing for Greensboro because Greensboro is very accustomed to regionalism in many ways and has been a leader there, you know, from an ORT, a USAR, helping neighbors, but that piece doesn't always exist. I think as we move forward, the approach of every community having their own identity and their own agency, if you will, that model may not continue to exist as we know it today in so many communities. So I get a chance to work with counties, Murphy to Mania, literally, throughout the state, and there's a lot of advantages and great things about having your own independent agency. But that's not always the most efficient way to operate. And so as we think about limited financial dollars and constraints, I see more regionalism in providing emergency services than we have had in the past. So I think that is an issue looking forward, but it's an opportunity for Greensboro as well to work with neighbors and show how models can work. Greensboro serves some unincorporated areas of Gilbert County as an example, so that could be models for other counties to follow. I'd say in the globally in the last 40 years is probably just the significant shift to more medical focus, and that's going to continue to be a more significant shift. So, globally, if I look from 1982 forward, yeah, that's if I had to put one thing, that's probably the most significant shift. So I deal with some. I grew up in a rural area, and back then in those areas, fire was the only thing that fire departments did. Rescue did rescue, fire did fire. But even in these rural counties today, and I get a chance to work with them, I'm actually doing a strategic plan for Cleveland County right now. But even in those rural counties, they're answering Delta and Echo. All of them are answering Delta and Echo calls. So very rural counties, volunteer departments are answering Delta and Echo calls. So, that's a significant change globally. Now, if your question is what's changed in the fire service globally in North Carolina the most in the last 40 years, I think that's really one big piece of it. Right behind that would be the cost of operating fire service in North Carolina. That is a significant change, and globally too, the need for personnel has changed significantly. The hazards in which we protect has changed so significantly. When I first started, I talked about the recruit academy. I was very fortunate because when I came in, I was right at that transition over when air packs became an essential piece of things. So some of the first training fires my department had, the air packs literally were in the back compartment in the rear of the truck. We had 2 of them. They were in the rear compartment, and on Sundays we had to open them up and spread them out so that we let them mold. We had to spray them down with Lysol to get the mold off of them. I'm not making that up. So, we put them out in the sun and we sprayed them down. They were heavy, and, they just stayed in boxes in the rear compartment. And I went into house fires when I was 16, and I come out on the front porch, and every orifice had stuff coming out. And I remember coming over and laying over a rail on the front porch. Everything's pouring out of every orifice. And I thought to myself, something's not right about this, okay? So the good news for me and my generation was very quickly thereafter we went through that training, and my department bought air packs. We had what we call an air truck, and we had air truck, we had air packs. We made that transition, and we had Scott packs on everything, and then our leader at the time, we made the transition, and it was an expectation we had air packs on inside every house fire from there forward. It no longer was acceptable to not do that. So I was very blessed. I came in right when that change occurred, and I felt, okay, this model here is not a good model. I was smart enough to know this is not good, and then I got the opportunity to be trained what was good, and most of my time I at least had that. We watch what's happened with cancer, even with the air pack, even with the gear, even with the hoods, even with every other level of protection we've had. And it's puzzling to us because we feel like at the time, I can't tell you how many levels of gear and equipment that I've authorized purchase over the years to all these folks buying what we thought at the time was the best gear possible to purchase, and people have still gotten cancer. And so it's very puzzling to know, what else could we possibly have done to purchase or to have provided that would have given better protection. But it's come a long way at the same time, but we've got so far to go. Yeah, and speaking of new recruits, always stay focused on the mission. You're here to serve people in their time of need. You exist to serve people. Stay focused on the mission. You're here to protect life and property. That's your mission, that's your purpose. Don't lose sight of why you're here and why we exist as an organization. In everything that you do, we're here to help people in their time of need. You're here to protect life and property. I think keeping that from firefighter to engineer to captain to battalion chief, division, battalion, deputy to fire chief, never lose sight of our mission and why we're here. Things people may not know about me. I love my family very much. Most people that are around me know that about me, and I'm so blessed. I have a 20-year-old son, and he's my center of attention, and I'm so very proud of him. And I love the mountains. Any opportunity I can go to the mountains, I do. I love Disney whenever I can go, though I hadn't been in a very long time due to the COVID situation. But just enjoy the outdoors. I love the state. I love the fire service, and I'm a pretty simple person. So I am so appreciative to my wife for being willing to move with me. You know, she picked up and moved with me to Asheville. Well, she moved with me from Raleigh to Burlington. She picked up and moved with me to Asheville. And then when Greensboro came and asked me to come here to finish my last few years, she told me, she said, "All right, I'll move with you one more time, and that's it. I'm not moving anymore. You move again, you're moving without me. So I'll move one more time, only if we can live in Burlington." I said, "Okay." So she said, "I'm not learning no other city." So she's been good to support me in being willing to make moves, because as fire chief, you either work your way through an organization, you spend your whole career in one, or you have to be willing to move to larger organizations, promote, if you will, to other organizations. That's just the track I happen to have. God intended me to take that route, and so she's been very supportive. She's had a really tough recent years medically, and so. It's good we've been here, so she's been close to Duke and been able to get help, that she's needed, and I think there's a reason we ended up here. But she's been supportive of me through those, through those moves, and enabled me to follow that dream, and enabled me to serve in those capacities. Yeah, I just would say, I think that the fire chief's job is one that's just not possible without the men and women of the department. The fire chief's just really facilitating and liaisoning between some of the city administration and the department. But the men and women of the department do all the work. And Greensboro is so blessed with people who are so dedicated to serving and professionalism and being innovative, and whether it be obviously fire, hazmat, USAR, the different specialty areas. I think that it's important to recognize how the diverse services that Greensboro has, and how well respected the men and women are in Greensboro, across the state, and the level of service that Greensboro provides. I think that sometimes when you're part of the department, you don't always recognize that or realize that. I have the ability to have seen that from the outside and the inside, and everybody can't really, not many people have that opportunity. So I had the ability to see that from the outside, the inside. Now I'm back to the outside, if you will. And so I've had a chance to see that from different perspectives and have a unique view. So the men and women of Greensboro Fire really have such a valuable opportunity to serve the city, the area, and be such an important part of regional services as well. And really are blessed to serve in a great profession, and are just very well respected by colleagues across the state. And not only do they have a an awesome profession, but they are very well recognized, and should be very proud of what they're doing, and certainly very appreciated.
In closing, the Greensboro Firefighters History Book Committee hopes you have gained a greater insight into the dangers, the challenges, and emotional events that have influenced and shaped the American firefighter.